Back on our Media Day coverage on NBA TV, a whole new era is about to begin in San Antonio. It's not the Pau Gasol era necessarily, all due respect to the future Hall of Famer. It's the post-Tim Duncan era. After TD quietly, typically, made his decision to retire this summer after a season in which the Spurs set a new franchise record for wins with 67, but lost in the conference semifinals against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Jared Greenberg is our man on the scene in San Antonio and joins us once again. Jared, it's just hard to imagine the San Antonio Spurs without Tim Duncan. It's been 20 years since they began a season without him. Do they feel like they're going to miss him more on the court or just as a general presence and a leadership influence on this team?
Well, Matt, I think it's a bit of both, and I think at this point it's still hard for the players to wrap their minds around it because during the Media Day festivities, Tim Duncan typically wasn't that involved. So I think it really sets in tomorrow when the players take this court with their uniforms on, ready to practice. But, you know, Greg Popovich falls back on the principles in which he built this outstanding organization, and he says we're going to be the same team, our same philosophy, our same culture. We're going to try and emulate that. Now he's just got to look to other guys to step up and take on roles to make sure that they continue to play and act as they always have over the last 2 decades.
Jared, you're looking at this San Antonio team, and we know what a great coach Papa is. How is he going to manage? Is he going to do some things different here? Because the San Antonio, even though they've added some guys, they've gotten a little bit older, even though these guys are still talented. Is he going to continue his rest and not traveling guys to try to keep this core well rested? Because if they're healthy, they can contend in the West, but everything's got to fall in place.
But yeah, you know, I think with Tim leaving, retiring, and Boris Diaw being traded, losing David West to the Warriors, you know, they technically did get a bit younger. About half of their roster now is 28 or younger, and they're coming to camp with 20 guys, and there's a handful of guys fighting really for 1, maybe 2 spots at most. I think you'll see a lot more from Kyle Anderson and Jonathan Simmons than you have in the past, but really when you talk about a team that was full of guys 35 and older last year, now you're going to look more towards the likes of a Patty Mills and Kawhi Leonard and certainly LaMarcus Aldridge, those guys to step up and play big minutes and be leaders and also produce at the same time.
Jared, question for me is, looking at the rookie Murray, what has the Spurs talked about his role? Will he have a chance to play more minutes alongside Tony Parker, or will he have a chance to play behind Tony Parker? And my second question is, how much do you think Pop will go back to his system of a David Robinson, Tim Duncan with a Pau Gasol and LaMarcus Aldridge?
Well, I think you bring in Pal Smitty because you want to play him, and you sign LaMarcus Aldridge, the biggest free agent prize this organization's ever landed a year ago, and you have to play him. And one of the things that I talked to LaMarcus about earlier today was him going back to the LaMarcus Aldridge we saw his last year in Portland. And Smitty, as you know, that includes shooting the long ball. Last year, his first in San Antonio, LaMarcus was 0 for 16 from downtown. I mean, this was a guy who his first 8 years in the NBA only took 116 threes, and meanwhile, his last year in Portland put up 105. So he feels he's worked on his game from the perimeter, and that's one way they can make this work on the offensive end to create more space. Now, in terms of the rookie point guard, DeJounte Murray, you know, the common answer we get to playing time and how guys will play together, and we got it from several different players today. Smitty and Bones, you guys have been well trained on this. That's a Pop question, and Pop is not answering those specifics just yet.
That's hard to believe. Pop is not offering to show his hand to you here in late September. I'm shocked. All right, Jared, appreciate it, and we'll talk to you later on in the show. The Spurs won a franchise record 67 games last season before bowing out in the conference semifinals, then faced the reality of Tim Duncan's retirement. Pau Gasol, who like TD is eventually headed to the Hall of Fame, is a pretty good plan B, but it's impossible to ignore the gaping hole left by Duncan's departure. Jared Greenberg was in San Antonio Monday covering the Spurs.
Have you heard from or will you reach out to Tim Duncan?
We talked during the free agency, and I think I've called him to tell him that I joined the team, and I was very excited and happy to make that decision. A few days later, he announced his retirement because I didn't want to get into his decision and his moment, even though I was excited to play with him and have an opportunity to be teammates at least for a year. That didn't happen, but from what I hear, he's going to be pretty involved.
Obviously, I miss Timmy in a myriad of ways, but for all the new faces and new blood coming in, it's just going to be fun to see how they progress, who we choose to be on the team, how they play together, how they react with each other. I'm very excited about that.
Pop still talks about maintaining the culture and the philosophy. How do you go about doing that without one of the pillars of the franchise?
Well, I think it's going to be a lot more, leadership to do between myself and Manu, showing, all the young guys the Spurs way, kind of. A little bit like when I first came in with Manu, Timmy showed us the way with David Robinson and Bruce Bowen, and so now it's our turn to keep that same level, same expectation, and try to have another great season.
You said last year that Kawhi Leonard wants greatness really badly. How much of that has to factor in his leadership abilities with this team?
Well, the leadership is the next step for him. He works on his basketball skills constantly, and obviously he's reached quite a position in that regard. But he won't let up. He'll continue to try to add to his game as he did this summer. But we want to see him demand more of teammates, coaches, and everyone around him to really try to take charge along with LaMarcus Aldridge and lead us in that direction into the future.
The evolution of the Spurs continues, but you can't look forward with this team without considering the void left behind by Tim Duncan. You both played with him. How much is this to overcome culturally and on the floor?
And I think we know his play and his numbers and what he means, the impact on the floor. But just not having Tim in that locker room, with him not even playing a game, just being around, is going to be surely missed. And I think not just for the players, I think for the coaching staffs and the front office, he's irreplaceable. So I think right now it's going to lean a lot on Tony and Manu, guys who've been there. But like Pop just said, it's going to have to be able to turn the corner. It's going to have to be LaMarcus Aldridge and Kawhi Leonard taking that mantle. And they can't be Tim Duncan, but they have to do it in their own way where there's a presence. You can't replace him. And if I was Pop, I'd just have him come to the locker room and just be there. 82 games, doesn't have to play, but just come to the locker room and be around, just to be around and have guys pick his brain.
I feel a little bit different than Smitty, Matt. I thought Tim was really dragging the franchise down. Last year they were #1 defensively and just #2 offensively. So they should have gotten off Tim. So I'm glad he's done playing. I'm kidding, of course. Big thing for them. Smitty and I both feel the same way. Their athleticism is a point of concern when you start to look at what it is that the rest of the West represents. In LA with the Clippers, they're inside with Blake Griffin coming back, jumping out of the gym, and DeAndre Jordan. You worry about that. Getting up and down with the Golden State Warriors, that's going to be difficult. So the athleticism of the Spurs, the veteran guys, are having a hard time keeping up with the young guys. They've got a lot to teach, but there's a lot of responsibility on the athletic players on this team to take a step up and to keep that pace going for San Antonio.
What do you think, Sam? With Kawhi Leonard and LaMarcus Aldridge now clearly as the two best players on this roster, what would it take for them to beat a Golden State, for instance, in a playoff series?
Well, right now I don't think that's their concern. I mean, when you listen to Pop, he's excited. Look, change after so long, it can be a good thing. He's rejuvenated. He's excited. How do I fit all these new pieces together? And these are good pieces. You look at San Antonio, and they're huge. When you look at their front line, you're talking about 7'2", 7 feet, and Kawhi Leonard is legit 6'8", 6'8.5". They're big, they're strong, and they may not be the fastest, greatest team, but they're smart. And I think for everybody else in the league, they're going to beat. Pop's got about 78 games to figure out how to beat Golden State, and with this revamped lineup with Kevin Durant in it. And if you look at going back when Golden State struggled, they started struggling more after San Antonio kind of figured out how to defend them with the switching and things. It kind of gave everybody a blueprint. I think this team is going to be really good. I think it's going to take them some time to figure it out, but you got the best coach in basketball in Pop. You still got some great players. And they remember not getting to the finals last year after winning 67 games. And trust me, Pop is going to figure out how to get these pieces together. But the key is Kawhi Leonard and his continued growth and his leadership. But they're still one of the best teams in the West. They're still the second best team in the West on paper. And they still have a formula to figuring out how to beat Golden State. Because, again, Golden State got to play defense and they got to rebound the basketball.
And we know by now not to doubt them.
No, yeah.
They figured this out so many different times before when we said, oh, they're too old. And now they're not this, or they're not that.